Yes, this is the Daniel Saul Show, the one, the only, the greatest sports analysis and entertainment podcast on the planet. To all my viewers and listeners, thank you so much for clicking on this edition of the Daniel Saul Show exclusively on YouTube, as well as additional highlights on other social media platforms such as X, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as here on YouTube in short format. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Shedeur Sanders and how he got drafted in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns, and why I think he got drafted that late. My reaction to the drop in his draft stock and everything that happened in the draft relating to Shedeur Sanders. Let's get into it. Okay, so this isn't really a day where I'm going to be answering a question. It's simply going to be the truth. The real reason why Shedeur Sanders got drafted by the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Now look, I think it's pretty safe to say that Shedeur Sanders was ranked the second best quarterback in this draft, only behind Cam Ward, who ended up going number 1 in the draft to the Tennessee Titans. Now look, Shedeur Sanders, to me, is a top 3 talent in the draft. Maybe top 5. But Shedeur Sanders deserved a first-round draft pick. The only reason why he got drafted so late was because of his dad, Deion Sanders, who just ran his mouth a lot, talked a lot, said a lot of things he shouldn't have said, the arrogance, the entitlement. And people could say, oh, Shedeur Sanders is this, he's that. Well, that's the way he was raised, obviously, so he knows no better. And you can't fault him for that. All you can, say is, well, that's his dad who did that. So you can't fault him for that. So, like I said before, he was projected to go in the first 10 picks. Either the Cleveland Browns at 2, who ended up trading down, and the Jaguars ended up trading up to get the number 2 pick, and that ended up being Travis Hunter. Or the Saints at pick 9, who could have picked Shedeur Sanders but chose Kelvin Banks, something like that. And then the Steelers at 20-something, and it was in the 20s, they had a pick, and Shedeur Sanders was projected to go there, the most out of any other team in the first round and pick. That didn't happen. And everyone was shocked. After the first round, Shedeur Sanders came out and said, well, we all know this shouldn't have happened, but God's got my back. I'm built for whatever it is. People were clowning him. People were, prank phone calling him. All this stuff. There was a comment that ended up coming out, and it was, from an NFL assistant, and he basically ripped into Shedeur Sanders. I mean, he just went off and said what he had to say. And a lot of people were confused, especially because he was, going down in the draft. And we were like, why? What's going on? Well, then this comment came out. I'm gonna read it to you. So, according to CBS, the unnamed coach told the NFL media that his interview with Shedeur Sanders was, quote unquote, the worst formal interview I've ever been in my life. He's so entitled. He takes unnecessary sacks. He never plays on time. He has horrible body language. He blames other teammates. But the biggest thing is he's not that good. Now, look, I don't agree with much of that statement. I think the only thing that you can say that's actually valid is him being entitled. And like I just got done saying earlier, that's nobody's fault other than his parents. That is because of how he was raised. You don't just, come out the womb and then immediately become entitled. You don't just grow up feeling entitled unless that's what you're used to. You're treated a certain way, you're brought up a certain way, and that's how it goes. So I think that that's very safe to say that ultimately that's just how he was raised. Shedeur Sanders is definitely a great teammate, and I watched every single interview after, a game of his for Colorado, in every single game, no matter what the O-line did, no matter how bad they were doing, you know what Shedeur Sanders said? It's my fault. It's my fault. I could have done this better. I could have done that better. That's not blaming your teammates. Now, if he's doing that off camera, then that's a completely different story. I'm not saying that that's, not a possibility. It definitely is. Anything in this world is a possibility. But my whole point is I saw him firsthand. I saw it. Him not blaming teammates and always blaming himself, saying he could have done this better, he could have done that better. His O-line is great. Dion was the one saying his O-line was bad, and he's the one who ultimately cut those O-linemen after the first season, and in the second season ended up being a little bit better, but still not the greatest. And yes, Shedeur Sanders has taken unnecessary sacks before. Some sacks he has taken was his fault, but he's a college football player. He's not an NFL player. They're not going to be the best. And, first of all, these NFL, analysts, these NFL recruiters, these evaluators, they don't understand what they don't know what they're doing. Okay, obviously they don't know what they're doing because they've evaluated all these quarterbacks over the years. Tom Brady ends up being picked in one of the last rounds of the draft. Ends up being the greatest quarterback ever. They evaluate all these quarterbacks. They said Bryce Young was going to be this. He was going to be that. And C.J. Stroud wasn't on his level. C.J. Stroud ended up becoming way better. They said the same thing about Caleb Williams. I said the same thing about Caleb Williams. And Jaden Daniels ended up proving everyone wrong and having the greatest rookie quarterback season of all time right after C.J. had the greatest rookie quarterback season of all time. So these evaluators, that's just a few examples. These evaluators don't know what they're talking about. These coaches who are trying to evaluate these players, they don't understand. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, ends up being a guy who brings his team to the Super Bowl. So you don't know what to expect of these quarterbacks coming out of college, going into the NFL. The people who get drafted in the first round end up not being the greatest thing since sliced bread anyway. So the reality is we don't know what to expect from these quarterbacks and these players. Not just these evaluators, but everyone, including myself. We don't know what to expect. And so in this case, the Browns saw that the Saints and the Steelers didn't take him, and they made a statement. The league made a statement. And after that, the Browns saw, we can take Dillon Gabriel because there's no Deion Sanders behind that. We're not going to deal with anything other than just Dillon Gabriel going out and working hard. So then he goes there, right? They draft him. I'm pretty sure late in the third round. 3 picks after Jalen Milroe gets picked by the Seattle Seahawks, they pick Dillon Gabriel. So in the 5th round, pick 144, Shedeur Sanders is picked. So they take a second quarterback. Here's why they did that. Okay, they said they weren't planning on it. This is why they did it. And I'm going to tell you my reasoning before I pull up a quote from the GM who said this, and I thought this before I even saw this on social media. This is just to prove my point. They did this because Shedeur Sanders, and the only knock that's valid on Shedeur Sanders' part is that he was given his starting job from high school to college because of his dad. His dad was the head coach, so he got the starting job wherever he went. High school, Jackson State, Colorado. That's the only knock you can give on him, and that he was handed the starting job. They got Dillon Gabriel, where there's no drama, no nothing. Joe Flacco is their quarterback right now. He's very old. He came out of retirement off his couch a year ago, trying to give the team some hope after Deshaun Watson's injury, all this extra stuff. They got rid of Jameis Winston. The Browns have Dillon Gabriel. They have Joe Flacco, an injured Deshaun Watson, and they pick Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is going to have to work for that spot. They picked Shedeur Sanders because if Dillon Gabriel doesn't work, you have a backup. Now this backup, before the season starts, there are 2 rookie quarterbacks that could fight for the starting position or fight for backup under Joe Flacco if Joe Flacco is, in fact, their best option. If he isn't, those 2 are fighting for the starting spot. It is competition. It will not be handed to Shedeur Sanders. The starting position will not be given to him. He has to go out and earn it. He has to go out and earn it. That's the reason why they picked him. That's the truth. They picked Shedeur Sanders second because they didn't want to feel like if they picked him first, he felt like he's going to have that mentality of going in there and saying, I have the starting position immediately because you picked me first and I am that guy. No. You're going to have to go work for it. This is not something that is given to you. You have to go against one of the best quarterbacks in the draft. That's a really good quarterback for a really good established team in college football, the Oregon Ducks. And Oregon did a lot to go get Dillon Gabriel. And you know what? They got him and they did great last season. And so you're going to go up against that guy. As the starting position, that's what you're looking for. That's what you're fighting for. Go out and compete and go get it. That is what they did. They picked him second because they want to see if he is made of the right stuff. And that is why they picked him second. And here is my quote from the GM of the Browns and what he says about why they picked Shedeur Sanders and what's the message. This is what he said, and I quote, "Look, got to come in and work. And you got to come in and compete. You know, that's the message. Nothing is given." And that's what he said. That's what GM Andrew Berry said about Shedeur Sanders and why they picked him second and why he got picked in the 5th round. Nothing is given. This is the NFL. You're going to go out and fight for your spot. That is the truth of why Shedeur Sanders was picked in the 5th round. It had a lot to do with Deion. That's why his draft went down. That's why he didn't get picked in the 1st round. They didn't want to deal with Deion because of the stupid comment saying there's a few teams I will never let him play for. They never knew which team it was. And the fact that these analysts and recruiters and these scouts, these evaluators are saying that Shedeur Sanders isn't good. Well, let me tell you what Shedeur Sanders is. Shedeur Sanders is athletic when people say he's not. He can throw the football very far. He has a really good arm when people question his arm strength. They question his intelligence. That might be something to question, but I haven't seen much of bad decision-making from him. There has been times where he makes bad decisions. That's everyone, no one's perfect. No matter what you're doing in life, sports or outside of sports, no one's perfect. He makes mistakes just like the rest of us. But for the most part, I've seen bigger mistakes from Lamar Jackson in college and the NFL. I've seen bigger mistakes from a lot of these quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders is tough. He had the worst O-line and took the most sacks out of any quarterback in all of college football 2 years ago and was in the top 5 for passing yards thrown. That says a lot about a guy. That means no matter how many times you get sacked or how many times you're running away from a sack, you can throw the football. He has athleticism. He has enough brain power to realize that, although I'm about to get sacked, I'm going to try and throw the ball and I'm going to try and make a play. He can maneuver people around the field. I've seen him do it. I've seen the communication. He has the ability to do it. Shedeur Sanders is tough, most importantly. After all those sacks taken, after every single sack he took, he got up and fought for the next play. He got up, went behind the center, and snapped the ball and made plays night in and night out, game after game. And no matter if they won or lost, he blamed it on himself and never the O-line. No matter if it was the O-line's fault or his, he took accountability. And that is something that you want in a quarterback in the NFL. No matter if it's the Browns or the Chiefs, that is what you want in a quarterback in the National Football League. And he will go out there now with less pressure because he got picked in the 5th round, getting less money. He will go out there and prove why he deserves a good contract. And he's going to prove why all these people didn't know anything about what they were talking about. They had no idea what they were talking about, and that he was the best quarterback in this draft. Watch him go out and prove himself. Watch him go out and prove he's better than Dillon Gabriel. Watch him go prove that he's better than Cam Ward and Jackson Dart. And watch what Shedeur Sanders does, and he's going to prove all of us wrong. He's going to prove everyone who doubted him wrong. And watch him do it. Watch him do it. And I'll be the first one to say, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll say it. I'll come on here and I'll say I'm wrong. But I know what I saw. Shedeur Sanders has the ability to be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback in the National Football League. And there is no reason why, other than Deion Sanders talking, why he got that low in the draft, why he was picked that low. The NFL made a statement that you can't control anything, Deion. This is on you. This has nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. This is on you. Shedeur Sanders didn't deserve this. He's a great kid, a great player, and obviously he has flaws, but there's no better time than to fix your mistakes because you're going into the pros. Shedeur Sanders is a professional. And just like a lot of these quarterbacks in the past, they will prove these evaluators wrong because they made a mistake. These coaches, these GMs, they made a mistake. And the Browns didn't look too happy about picking Shedeur Sanders. Watch. They will regret those just not happy faces. They will regret it. Because they will be happy at the end of the day that they picked this man. No matter if they wanted to or not, he's going to prove them wrong.